Let's hit record. Welcome, everybody, to another episode. Oh, I just hit my mic. That's not good. That's a great way to start this off. Of Spectrum Talk. You remember how I said that the week after the last episode, it was going to go back to being regular? I was going to start uploading stuff to the channel and start streaming. And, I was supposed to have a podcast that last week. Yeah, that didn't happen. Though not for the reasons that it didn't happen last time. It didn't happen this time because, holy shit, it didn't burn down. I was going to say the whole state burned down, but no, it froze. The entire fucking state just froze. So that was fun. Collapsing like my internet bandwidth is right now. Holy shit. Why is it doing that? Oh, okay, that seems to be better. Man, it's been a ride. Weirdest thing about it is today, I think it was like the high was 74, 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is much warmer. Much, much, much warmer than it was. Much warmer than it was fucking yesterday or any of last week. When I upload that damn episode on the 13th, Spectrum Talk. And I really thought I knew it was gonna be bad. I didn't think it was gonna be this bad. I had no idea that and it's not over. The storm is gone. The cold is gone. At least for right now. Apparently it's supposed to be like another cold front or something. I don't know. But I had no idea it was going to be like this. I tell you what, these last... you always know that things are not as good as they seem to be. But my God, the last 4 years, the Trump administration, we just really proved to everybody who at least doesn't have their head up their ass just how bad things can get and how bad things are and how really things are being held together with like gum and duct tape, and that if the right people aren't in charge, it can fall apart. This myth that we believe that this country is built so well that no one can be bad enough to bring it down. I'm here to tell you that we just had, and people are saying it's unprecedented. This storm was not unprecedented. We had a similar event in 2011. It freezes in Texas. What's unprecedented about it is it's been 10 years. What's unprecedented about it was the level of failure that took place. However, unprecedented means something that is completely just taking everybody by surprise. And from a citizen's point of view, it is. But for something to be truly unprecedented, it would have to take government officials by surprise. It didn't. In 2011, the state of Texas was warned that we got lucky and that our infrastructure needed to be completely overhauled. And if it didn't, if we got a worse storm, and not just with, it didn't just have to be cold, it could be a heat wave, that our entire grid could collapse. And by the way, these warnings did come from federal regulators, but they weren't telling us to become part of the United States grid. We could still stay separate. And I kind of like part of the idea of staying separate. The reason that I like it is very different than the reason the Texas government likes it. They like it because they can privatize everything and make a bunch of fucking money. I like the idea of staying separate because if in an event that your national grid goes down, though it is separated into sectors and whatever, but in the event that if something hit that it affected everybody who was connected, we would be okay because we were separate. And technically speaking, there is no state better suited for a mass energy surge or power shortage than the state of Texas, as we produce more power than any state in the United States of America. The energy capital of the United States of America is Houston, Texas. Despite having the second biggest population, we are not the biggest. We don't have the most homes. We don't have the most people. That would be California. We output the most power. So we have a lot laying around, and we're on our own grid. So you think we'd be okay? Nope. Because we didn't give a damn. Well, not the citizens, the government didn't give a damn. And they hung us out to dry. But they knew this. They knew this was possible. They knew that not only was this possible, this was a certainty that this was going to happen because it already had happened. And not just because of climate change. Storms like this will get worse because of climate change. Polar vortexes and Arctic storms and winds and chills like this will happen and be worse and more brutal. Will happen more often because of climate change. But Texas used to be colder. It just did. It used to snow a lot more often. It used to ice a lot more often. But this event it was very sudden. So it went the week before, I believe we had a high of almost 80 degrees. I remember one day it got hot. It was like actually very hot. And then we went from that to, I think when wind chill and everything was like -5. That's a shock to the system. And that shock alone can actually put you in shock. That can kill people. And that is why blue northerns, because northern is like just kind of a cold front on steroids, and a blue northern is like it's even worse. It can drop your temperatures fast. And these things happen. They've always happened, and they're going to happen. And with climate change, they're going to get worse. We know this. We have known this. This was all preventable. At worst, I thought we'd stay home from work for like maybe a week because it was going to get that bad. It ices all the time up in North Texas. It's iced here. It snowed here. It snowed not too long before this, and we stayed home from work. Don't get on the roads. Don't slide off and die. That's what I thought it was going to be like. I thought it was just going to be that, but a little bit more extreme. I did not expect water and power and gas, everything to shut off because it was going to freeze. I thought people in charge would have had common sense and would have winterized stuff. But apparently, people don't. I don't. People at houses still put in giant heaters and run them off gas or electricity or whatever that can heat houses in freezing temperatures, and we still insulate the crap out of them, despite living in a state where we've had a few winters where it didn't get below freezing more than, I think, 7 days out of the entire season. It's not that cold. That's also due to climate change, but it usually gets cold, but we've had a few years where it's been weird. This year, definitely. I mean, today it was in the 70s. Mid-70s. God, what's happening in the bit rate? It is just jumping up and down. Wish there was something I could do about that. But it was just didn't. That happens. And then. But we still have the heaters. We still have the insulation. We still have all of that. Because it could happen. I actually think there are other states, like I think in San Francisco and California, there are a lot of buildings that don't have insulation because they didn't start requiring it until really late. There are a lot of apartment buildings that don't. So people are boiling or freezing in their houses in temperatures that aren't that hot, but since there's no insulation, there's nothing keeping cool air in or hot air in, people are freezing when it's generally not that cold outside or generally not that hot outside. But in Texas, it doesn't happen because every house has insulation because we've been putting it in. We were the kings of it back when, it was asbestos. We were pretty big on asbestos. Taking apart some houses that are really old and they still got asbestos in them. And that is dangerous and scary. So I would have thought we would at least would have winterized because the possibility it's there. It can freeze. It freezes pretty regularly. It's not like we don't ever freeze. It's not like this has never happened before. It's not like it wasn't freezing a few weeks before this. Now, below zero temperatures in Texas, that's not regular at all. That was weird. We broke the record that was set back in 1990, which was 10 degrees. Now, I've actually lived through close to that record. We didn't break it. We got close. 12 degrees, but there wasn't any storms. It was just cold. It was open air, no clouds. It was cold. We got down to 12 degrees at night. In some of the situations, it gets cold. It always has been. So do deserts. The hottest deserts in the world also get really fucking cold at night. Stupidly cold. It just happens. Speaking of things that just happen, my internet upload speed just is terrible. It was fine a while ago. I don't know what's going on now. I really wish it did. It's going from like 3,000, which is not even set to. Even though I pay for 20 up, I only use 2,500 kbs. It's going from like 0 to 3,000, then back to like 100, then 0. It was fine earlier. But yeah, this was bad, and people died due to negligence. That's what it was. People were, as I work at a lumber yard, people were running our store, getting all kinds of supplies to keep their houses heated and keep their pipes from bursting because that's what they were worried about. We sold one generator and only sold it to the one guy who asked about it. I never even thought about a generator because I didn't think the power was going to go out. And if it did, I thought it was going to go out. I believe the guys talked about it. It's like, well, it's like we live out in the country, and if it ices real bad, tree limbs can fall down, and the power lines can get so heavy they fall. I'm like, yeah, they can. That can't happen. That's happened in 2011. That happened. We saw that. I'm actually surprised the tree branches didn't fall on my house. Very thankful that didn't happen. And there's actually an electric pole not too far from my house that's like broken in half and it's leaning. I hope they fix that soon. Like other things I wish they'd fix, this bit rate. Holy shit. I've lost 6,006 frames. I wish I could help that. This is why I record things separately and upload them to YouTube instead of just doing a Twitch export thing. For anyone interested in the video, and the audio is uploaded to Anchor and wherever podcasts you listen to. And we're back to 0 again. Thank God. I'm just going to have to keep talking through it. There's nothing I can do to fix it. But yeah, we sold one. We only had one generator to sell. We'd sold a bunch of them, a bunch of little ones, like months and months and months ago to some contractor. Because when you're on a job site, you usually don't have power if it's like brand new. So you need power for your tools, so people buy generators. So we just sold a bunch of them. But it wasn't for any weather-related anything. We had one guy come in, well, him and another guy, buy this generator. Good generator. But throughout that entire week selling this stuff, no one asked for a generator. No one called for a generator. The thing that we sold the most of, and people called for, pipe insulation, heat lamps, both the bulbs and the actual lamp that it screws into, and heaters, which we didn't have. We ran out of those very quickly. And then propane. People ask for propane, but we also, our store's right next to mass butane, so I don't know why. Go there. Or mass propane. Either way. No one thought the power was going to go off because they're using electricity. No one thought, outside of if your lines go down. Some people were thinking power could go off, but then people were thinking, oh, we're running off natural gas. Well, that's another problem that happened. Some of the natural gas just stopped. Now, where I work, apparently power issues weren't so bad, but where I live, we lost power, I think Sunday night. I know I wasn't able to take a shower till Thursday because it uh I made an executive decision. It just wasn't worth it. I don't have any electricity, and it was like 40 degrees in the house. And it's like I'll just stay stinky and feel disgusting because that's better than freezing to death in your home from hypothermia. I think it's just better. It's not like I'm going anywhere. Um, but then it just lasted till Thursday. And the reason and then when we would have power in spots, when it would come back, and it was supposed to be like the rolling blackouts, the way they're supposed to work was supposed to be 1 hour off, 1 hour on, just to conserve energy across the board. That was a fucking lie because that never happened. What it was like was if you were lucky, you got an hour of power. But you were probably getting like 20 minutes. I saw some people, there were videos of their power came on for 20 seconds. I shit you not, and then cut off, and it was off for hours. But it came on for like 30 minutes, and then was off for 6 hours. That's what we were getting. So I could have took a shower, done something in that. I could have if there was any water. I thought a pipe had burst. And I was like, well, shit. And until this wind stops, I'm not going to be able to find it if it's frozen over. But it was weird. I have a plumbing background. Dad's a plumber. I grew up in plumbing and everything. I've seen busted pipes. I've seen what it looks like when you turn them on. And I've seen what it looks like. I've also seen frozen pipes. I know what that looks like in a house. You can tell. There's usually like a loss of pressure. Sometimes if it's still running and there's some kind of crack in it, if the water's still able to get to you, to the house somehow, you'll get shit will come out, like dirt or whatever. Sometimes ice can come out, but that's very rare. But this was weird because it started stopping in weird places. So I was like, I guess this is all the water in the line, so it must have froze somewhere beyond the house. I was hoping maybe it's just frozen and not broken. Praying to God. Well, I was right about that, except it wasn't my house. What it was our fucking water tower and pump station. Froze. And they were unable to keep pumping, because water won't freeze, or, let me rephrase this, water will freeze, but it's usually harder to freeze, unless it gets colder, if it's moving, which is why they tell you to turn your faucet on to keep your pipes from busting. Keep that water moving, pipes won't bust, because the water won't freeze, so on and so forth. Problem is, if your pump stations go, water doesn't move. The water in a water tower works, and it can work without electricity up to a certain point, because it's gravity fed, but you have to pump water up into the water tower, and then it goes down. Problem is if the electricity's out, all the water that's up in the water tower, once it's drained, that's all the water you got. Unless water's fucking frozen. One of the reasons the water froze is because the electricity was knocked out. We're getting wind chill of, I don't know what it was at the time, but it was well below zero. And no electricity, no way to warm it, nothing. Froze our pump station and our water tower, and it was frozen for days. And they were asking random people for generators so they could start it up and try to get this thing warm, because for whatever reason, Texas, the ERCOT decided they weren't considered, because if you're on a circuit that's considered, there's a word I'm looking for, needed or mandatory or whatever, like a hospital circuit, they're not going to cut their power. But even if they did, hospitals have generators, but they're not going to cut their power. Hospital can get their power cut due to a storm or whatever, but the backup generators should kick on. But they're not going to willingly cut a hospital's power. So if you live in a house next to a hospital and you're on the same circuit, and something like this happens, you likely will not get your power cut. You will, however, get charged an incredibly high bill for some stupid-ass reason. Somehow that's legal, despite us having price gouging laws directly related to natural disasters, which this was declared before it even hit, both on the state level, local, state, and federal level. So, yeah, I don't know how that's working. People are being charged thousands upon thousands of dollars on their electric bills. So that's fucking stupid. I haven't seen mine yet. I'm a little scared, but ours is through the city, so But we didn't have any power, so I better not be charged for shit. But it froze, and they deemed that they weren't necessary, so they cut their power. So they had no way to warm it up. They had no way to move the water, nothing. So they could only warm it up in bits. I think they finally got some generators together, and we're trying to warm them. Ran out of fuel. That was the thing. A lot of the gas stations around here, I think we're okay now, but a lot of places I know up in Austin, out of gas, out of diesel. A lot of places in Lexington, out of gas, out of diesel. A lot of places around here were out, but I think we're good now. I think Buc-ee's is still good. No, I think I read on the door. I don't know about today, but they were out of gas, running out of fuel. So that's. Luckily, I had gassed up my car before all this happened, so I'm still able to get to work. I'm hoping that gets sorted out by the time I need to fill up my car. Here's to hoping. But this is probably the worst natural disaster I've lived through. And just personally have lived through. Not ever, or not in my lifetime. No, there have been much worse ones. Personally lived through, that personally affected by. But this is definitely one of the worst in the last 20 years in the state of Texas. Harvey was bad, but actually I think this might have a higher death count now. Harvey didn't kill... well, hold on. Harvey's weird. Hurricanes are weird in general because death counts on hurricanes are odd. Because unless they get a lot of attention, and you think Hurricane Harvey would, but once they could get the city back up and running, they kind of stopped caring. But deaths in hurricanes are weird, so if you don't... It's weird, well, what they consider a death in a hurricane. If you die due to complications, that's technically a death during a hurricane because you died during the fucking hurricane because it knocked the power out and you died because you couldn't get oxygen or you couldn't get dialysis or whatever. You died because of the hurricane. But you may have died after the hurricane was gone, so they may not count you, or you might get counted later. But the official death toll won't change until someone updates the damn thing. Kind of like what's going on with Puerto Rico. I don't think the official death toll has been changed, despite federally it's been recognized that the official death toll is wrong, and the death toll is actually in the thousands. So Harvey's weird, but we've lost quite a lot of people. I think it was 20 or 30 for something that was highly preventable. You can't prevent a hurricane, but I've always been of the opinion that no one that's able, keyword able, should ever die or be injured in a hurricane. What I mean by able, not impoverished, has access to a motor vehicle or some form of transportation. That's kind of it, because unlike this, no one thought it was going to get this bad. We knew it was going to get bad, but we thought we were just going to take shelter and it'd be fine. Hurricanes you can see coming from miles away, and you know when they're going to hit. The only thing that gets weird about them is predicting their trajectory, and they can change last second. But if I'm driving across the state and it goes, oh no, it fucked off and hit another state, and I'm like, okay, I'll just drive back. Oh no, I burned some gas. But if I go, I'm going to wait it out, and Hurricane Harvey happens and I drown, I'm an idiot. That's my fault. But if I don't have a way to get out of there, I don't have anyone to contact, I can't get out of there, that's not my fault. I'm just in a bad situation. First responders and stuff like that, people who are staying to help people, that's also different. They're trying to help people. I'm talking about people who think I'm bigger, I'm better than a storm because for some reason that's something to prove. I don't care how big you think your dick is. You're not going to beat a hurricane. It's a hurricane. You're not going to beat a regular-ass thunderstorm. The amount of energy one of those things produces is massive. A bolt of lightning from a regular thunder shower will kill you dead. Can kill you dead. You can survive, but also just kill you dead. Randomly. There's nothing you can do to prove you will just die. It's a hurricane. Get out. Get out of the way. It's a serious deal. So if a hurricane's ever coming my way and I'm on the coast, I'm getting the hell out of there. Once you're inland, board up and go if you can. Don't worry about your job because it's a hurricane. You're not going to be able to get to your job the next day anyway because it's a hurricane. There's not going to be a job there. Leave. Don't die. Things like tornadoes and other events that just show up and wreck your shit, you can't do anything about them. You can prepare, but tornadoes don't come from hundreds of miles away and get named and categorized, and you know when they're going to hit, how bad it's going to be, and shit like that. Tornadoes just show up and decide to kill you. There's not much you can do about that. There's some things you can do if you see one coming, and you can prepare and do all that, and you can monitor radar, and you can learn, and there's stuff you can do. You can become educated and informed, and I believe everybody should do that, but there's not a lot you can do. Same with lightning. You can just get struck by lightning and be dead. Forest fires are also incredibly fast. It can happen like that, and you can get caught in one pretty fast. But when they tell you to get the hell out of there, get the hell out of there. Do not wait. Get the hell out of there. When they tell you to get the hell out of there, get the hell out of there. When you see it coming, get the hell out of there. It will kill you. A tornado is very different because they're very fast, they're very random, and they just show up and kill you. There's not much you can do. Flash floods, same thing. Just stay out of the areas where they happen. You'll be fine. Earthquakes just fucking happen. Hurricanes, not the same thing. This was something that we saw was going to happen, but no one, outside the people who knew and didn't give a shit, no one knew that it was going to be this bad. No one expected it to just collapse, the whole infrastructure. It wasn't that the storm was so bad, it was that just everything failed. Everything failed. It was like 40 and 50 degrees, which 50 was pretty warm for what a lot of people got. We were lucky. Very, very blessed. And the power wasn't bugging me because I'm okay with cold, and the house is insulated, and you can keep a house pretty warm. As long as you're above freezing, you're good, and you can get blankets and jackets, and we're just wrapping up in clothes, and we couldn't go anywhere either, so we basically laid in bed for a week because it was the warmest place to be, and body heat's great. People don't realize how great body heat is warming you up. So we were fine. The no running water thing sucked. And it was because of one reason, that was the toilet. And it was because I didn't fill the bathtub because I didn't think I wasn't in. I lived through Hurricane Harvey. I was inland, so I didn't just leave. I was in Brenham, Texas at the time, which is about an hour or so away from Houston. If I was in Houston, I would get the hell out of there. But we did get a pretty direct hit from the eye. It came over us, and it stalled out, and it flooded, and it was bad. But I was inland. A lot of the worst things about a hurricane are your storm surge and the fact that when it floods, there's nowhere to go. If you're inland, especially if you're living on like a hill, hurricane's okay. And it doesn't really matter how far inland you're going unless you're driving to El Paso. A hurricane is going to cause other problems across a wide landmass. It's a big-ass low-pressure zone. It's a giant thunderstorm. So it's going to cause other issues with thunderstorms. In fact, a lot of times tropical depressions and storms can be worse because people don't prepare for them because they think, oh, it's not a hurricane, it's not that bad, and then all kinds of people get killed because they're idiots. Also, it will deform real fast and then just become a massive supercell, and then you get a bunch of tornadoes. When you get a tornado outbreak, that's when you start getting issues. That didn't happen in Harvey, though there were a few tornadoes, and they got close. I remember being in the HEB because I was working on a night crew at the time and just watching. We were listening because it knocked the radio out, and we were hearing it, the wind like pull the bolts off the roof. We were just like, and just it rattling together and scraping. We were all looking up like, oh, this isn't good. And then it was not the smartest decision to be there. They finally told us at like 2 or 3 a.m. It's like, you can go home if you don't feel safe. And we're like, oh, thank God. And we looked, and it's like, oh, thank God you told us now because the water's just now up to the door. So we're stuck here anyway. But we never lost power. Our water was fine. We never got a boil water notice. I know, what was it, Tropical Storm Imelda or Tropical Storm. One of the storms that hit after Harvey that got a little bit more inland and flooded Austin, they had to boil their water for a long time because it raised the river. There's the river, one of their drinking water sources up so high, and it got mixed with a bunch of crap, and they had to boil their water for like a month. It was bad. Um, but no, Harvey was bad. Harvey was awful. I would not want to live through Harvey ever again, and I would never wish that on Houston or anybody ever again. But this was worse, just because everything failed. When Harvey hit, when a hurricane hits in general, you know what you're gonna get. It's a fucking hurricane. High winds, water, maybe tornadoes and hail and stuff like that. It's a big ass storm. So you know how to prep for that. 1, get the fuck off the coast. 2, bunker down. Don't drive in it. Don't be stupid. You know, we stored up on water and food because we knew it was going to happen. We knew the power would get knocked out. All the things that we prepared for didn't fucking happen. I mean, it did flood. Flooded so bad. And there were a few tornadoes, but you were fine. The highway washed away. But for this, I didn't think that was going to happen. I was like, well, just, we'll get some food here and there and we'll be fine. I didn't expect our water towers to freeze because that doesn't fucking happen. I've never heard of that happening. I thought maybe our pipes could bust, but I was pretty sure they'd be fine. But so we were kind of running into problems of how we were going to flush this commode because we don't have the water. Our pipes were empty. We'd already used all the water in the pipes to flush the commode. And we're like, what are we going to do? And there were almost nobody was open, and it was dangerous to drive. So we finally got Joe went out and looking, and there was almost no water because everybody had made a run on it. Picked up some Dasani, which is right behind me. But she had a great idea. It's like, there's ice. I don't mean on the ground. I mean, they're still selling ice. No one's buying ice. Why don't we just get a bunch of it and, like, melt it? I'm like, that's fucking smart. So that's what we did. Also, you can melt snow and everything. The only thing I don't like about that, now, granted, if you're in a pinch and it's a disaster and whatever, do what you got to do. You can also use anything. If there's nothing but, like, I hate unsweet tea. So if there's gallons of unsweet tea, would have bought it. If there's gallons of Gatorade that you hate, buy it. That'll flush fine. Only thing I don't like about using stuff from outside like snow is if you do it and just throw it in there, it can get in there and clog shit up and just cause issues. It can. That's why I don't like doing it. But if push came to shove, I was gonna fucking do it. Luckily, stuff started to get better around that time, and they were able to get everything unfrozen. But we didn't have any water pressure for a while, so I took like a really weird shower. Felt like I was. You ever like put your thumb over a water hose, but then just hold it up, and it kind of rains down real softly? That's what the shower was like, except less. There was no pressure. So I'm like this, trying to get it on my hair and everything. It was weird, but it's finally back to full pressure. I think we're still boiling it, but I don't use it to drink much except for tea, and you boil that anyway. Well, you boil part of it, but I haven't made tea. But I got plenty of water. But like, I just can't. Everything just failed, and we were lucky. We were blessed. It didn't get that cold in here. I mean, 40 degrees was cold, but that's livable. There were people who died. Lots of people who died. People that got caught in it. Kids who died. People that required dialysis but couldn't because they didn't have any damn water and they died. Like, all this was preventable. But we lived through it. And I'm very glad we lived through it, and we're very blessed, and I just can't believe it got this bad. I can't believe that this... At worst, I thought this was going to be like the big freeze, and we were going to talk about it. Remember that big freeze? Yeah, it was crazy, because that's kind of how we talk about Hurricane Harvey. So Hurricane Harvey was bad. It caused so much suffering. It was awful. But we kind of talk about it like this thing that happened. And Hurricane Harvey was a long time ago. And it feels like a long time ago. It both does and doesn't, but it wasn't that long ago. But just so much has happened since then. But talk about like, oh, remember that big freeze? And it's going to be one of those events that you remember. It's one of the worst that I've experienced firsthand. And everything is... I don't think it would have been as bad if we hadn't been in the middle of a pandemic. Of course, nothing is as bad if you're not in the middle of a pandemic. Everyone just being like run down so much already. All the toll that's taken on everybody, and then this on top of it is just. Now, is this the worst thing that I could have been put through? Absolutely not. Are there worse weather events? Oh, hell yeah. Um, hell yeah. Like, uh, like would I trade? There are things I would trade going through this over. Yeah, hurricane, absolutely, because you can get the hell out of the way of a hurricane. I've been through several of them. Been through several tropical storms. Been through nothing like this. I know. I'm fairly certain, unless you're on an island, which sucks. That is kind of hard to get off a hurricane, out of a hurricane's path. If you can't get a plane ticket, or you don't have time to get on a boat, that's terrible. That's legitimately awful. So, but I'm talking about you live in a big country like the United States. Those poor people in Puerto Rico. Um, no, I'm not blaming them because there's nowhere to go. At a certain point, you're in the middle of the island. There's nowhere to go. So if a hurricane, or I guess it'd be still be a hurricane, or something that hits Hawaii or any other island nation. No, that's not your fault because there's nowhere to go. If you don't have the money or the time to get there. But if you have a car and you live in the continental United States and there's a big storm coming, you can drive and get the fuck away from it. It's a hurricane. But yeah, I'd ride out another hurricane. Absolutely. I rode out Harvey. Harvey was fine. Scary. It was terrifying. This was worse. This was worse because at a certain point you kind of knew what Harvey was going to do. It's like, it's just going to keep raining. And I was more scared for other people than I was for myself. I was more scared about getting to work and everything. But we still had power. We had plenty of food. We were still able to get to a few places. The whole city wasn't shut down. There were a few days where the rain bands passed us, but it rained for like a month. It was bad. This was. It seemed like every day it got worse, and I didn't know. Um, there were some events that I was adjacent to that were much worse than this. That I would not like to live through. I saw the Bastrop fires. You could see them from my house. It looked like we were at war. Like, you know, when you see like photos of war and you see like the big, like the smoke clouds where like the bombs gone off and like big smoke cloud, and in those pictures, it looks like they're really far away, and maybe they are. Well, let me tell you, this smoke cloud, Bastrop fire, which was the worst fire in Texas history, which I also believe was 2011. The top of it looked like the biggest thunderstorm I've ever seen in my entire life, and the bottom of it, which went all the way to the ground, everything was burning, and it was the size of the whole damn county. And it just I was gonna say every day, but by the hour it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we were getting to the point where we're starting to wonder: do we need to evacuate? Because it's in Bastrop County, it's not in the Lee, but are we gonna get out? Because they were getting people out of McDade, and we're like, is this thing gonna get to Lexington? And unfortunately, it didn't. But there were people we knew, family at the time, not anymore, not since the divorce, but family at the time, that lost their homes. But I didn't live through that. I was adjacent to that. I saw it, but I wasn't in Bastrop. I was in Lexington. But a lot of people that were in Bastrop that lost that, that's awful. Would never want to live through one of those. But I was adjacent to that. We were, outside looking in. I was almost in it because it got real close. You don't realize how close those fires get before they tell you to get the hell out of there. It looked like I could just go over the hill and it would be right there. Just absolutely incredible. The amount of destruction that fire did. Those are awful. But there's been events like that I was adjacent to. But nothing that I've actually been in that's worse than this. Stuff that was scarier. Like, there's been a few tornadoes I got caught in. Minor tornadoes that didn't do a lot of damage. Those are scary. The scariest part about those events was I couldn't see the damn things, but they were on the radar, and people were spotting them, and we could listen to them on like the storm chaser chatter. It's like, oh man, this thing's huge. I'm like, what the fuck? And it was chasing us. And we couldn't see it, and it disappeared before we ever saw it. But yeah, being we weren't chasing it. We were trying to get away from it, but it was following us. The path of the tornado was following our path, and it was going along the road. Being chased by a tornado that you can't see is probably the most terrifying experience. Because it's like, well, I guess any moment it could. Because we were also surrounded by trees. Because we were also coming from Bastrop at the time. At any moment, if it gets close enough that it's moving the trees, it's too late. It's on top of you. You're in so much trouble. That never happened. A few scary moments. I did one that got close to this house. It was crossing across the road, and I was like, I wonder if I can go see it. So I went and got in the car and drove. And I was coming across the corner. I was like, man, according to radar, it should be like right here. And I was going slow, and I didn't see anything. And there was like no storm. Like it was real still. And I was like, this doesn't seem right. And I was like, drive right on a curve, got to a clearing. I saw like a traffic cone fly, and then I looked on that clearing, and there it was. It was massive, gigantic thing. It never organized. It kept dipping and then going back up. Never organized. If it had, it would have wiped the town off the face of the earth. I'm so glad it didn't. It was massive. Just never got together. Thank God. But if it did, oh my God, it was massive. There were 3 tornadoes in that day. That one I saw it, and I U-turned in the middle of the highway and got the fuck out of there. And then it started hailing. It's like, oh shit. So I got caught right in the middle of that one. That was more adrenaline rush than scary. I just didn't expect to come on it that fast. But the other one I got caught in the middle of the night. It was pitch black. That one was bad. In terms of being scary. It didn't hurt anybody. And then the one coming to Bastrop, that was scary. There was one I was asleep. There's 2 I was asleep for. Those were fun. One of those actually was really bad. That was an F3 that hit in East Texas. I was asleep for, and I got woke up, and I was like, "Oh, we'll be fine. You go hide in the cupboard. You go hide in the cupboard and lock the cupboard. Where are you going?" I was like, I'm gonna go look for it. And we were surrounded by trees at the time. Always surrounded by trees, and but that time I could see the sky swirling, like it was being pulled down. And I was like, man, this thing must be massive. And power got knocked out for a little bit, came back on. Okay, that's not a good sign. See, that's the fun thing about these power outages that happen now. When you get thunderstorms, you always see it in movies that, oh, power gets knocked out. I only have a few memories of power getting knocked out during thunderstorms. There was one where we stayed up all night, and the reason we stayed up all night, come to find out, is I don't know how this is for people in other states, or even for people in other places of Texas, but the power does not go out that often here, even during a thunderstorm. If it is storming, I've had lights flicker, and that's scary. If the power goes out, and it's like sudden, just zoom, especially if there's like a loud pop, that's not a good sign. That's not something that just happens. Best case scenario, tree fell. Just took out power lines. Or a transformer blew up. Problem is, and I have heard one of those. I've heard of a transformer blow up real close by. I thought a bomb went off. That's terrifying. It didn't affect my power, but I don't know. It was in town when the transformer just exploded. I was riding my bike when I was a kid, and it just exploded. It was terrifying. But power goes out, bad shit's happening. The power usually doesn't go out unless a tree falls on it or something. It's usually pretty stable. Or lightning strikes it. Lightning striking can happen, can knock power out, especially if it strikes your house or near your house. But a lot of that's been worked out. Usually a lightning strike will cause a power surge. Will only usually knock your power out if it blows up the... I just talked about it. I just talked about transformer or blows up your own breaker or whatever, but we lost like 2 computers to that. But one, it just made a brownout, which is where it goes out and then comes back on real fast. Yeah, we just lost a computer to a power surge. But there was one time we lost power for an entire night, and we stayed up all night. And I was a little kid, and it was my brother, my sister, mom, and dad. They were still married at the time. We stayed up all night, and it was hailing real bad. And we were like listening to like this little battery radio, and everybody was staying up or taking mom and dad were taking turns like napping and then coming back awake and then looking out the windows going storming. And they never did this for other storms. And in fact, in a lot of other storms, as I grew up with them, they didn't give a shit about. So that told me something real fast once I think about on this memory is they took that very seriously when the power got knocked out because that doesn't happen. Power gets knocked out, it's because something made it go out. If something makes it go out, that's usually pretty big, like a tornado. Tornadoes knock power out all the time because what do you think happens? Something swirling just sucks up power lines or throws a tree at it. Power gets knocked out. So if power gets knocked out during a thunderstorm, bad shit's happening. Best case scenario, just lightning or a tree fell down. Hopefully it just fell down on its own. If not, something made it go down, which could be a tornado. You never want to get caught in a tornado. Bad shit happens. So like, yeah, so the power going out over this and being out for days, it was like, this is bad. And being through all those hurricanes I've lived through, no power went out. Now in Houston, power went out and stuff like that because of the water got so high. And I think they killed power on purpose. That's some hospitals because Harvey wasn't that windy of a storm. It was raining. Now, it was Category 4 when it hit, but it started dying down, but it just kept raining. Water got so damn high, if power line goes in the water, it electrocutes people. As long as there's something within the water, an electrolyte. It electrocutes people, so they're killing power to save people. And, but for us, we were fine. But it was the entire state just goes down. My God, when that happened, I was like, this is worrying. Because this hasn't happened. I've been through lots of storms, lots of different types of storms and weather events, and this has never happened like this. And I'm sure it's going to get worse in the future because that's just how these things work. But we survived, started running out of food, or out of good food for a little bit. But then, I think restaurants are open back up now. I went back to work for one day, which was Friday. That was the last day the ice was actually on the ground. It froze last night. It's not freezing right now. I think it's 57? So it's not even really that cold outside anymore. Still got plenty of Dasani water. Water's back on. Power's obviously back on. The internet's being weird, but the internet's always weird. So we're doing good. There's a lot of good resources. Beto O'Rourke and AOC, Representative AOC, have separate. They have, if you follow them on Twitter or looking, are posting and helping out with a bunch of different charities that are going to help people in Texas because a lot of people are in a real bad spot, as well as the Red Cross. They're helping people in Texas, giving food, water, and shelter. Some people still don't have shelter because of the pipes that have bursted. Some people lost their houses in fires. And that's shitty. It's everything. It's freezing. You know, there's so much snow and rain and sleet, and your house burns down. What did Black's Barbecue or some barbecue joint in Austin burned down during Hurricane Harvey, which that fucking sucked. Most rain in Texas history, and your restaurant catches fire. But they have a bunch of different ones, but the Red Cross is the easiest one because it's like a general. But there's a bunch of different ones that go to certain communities. If you have a few dollars to spare, I helped. I just donated some money. I don't know, it was like $20 or $30 to the Red Cross because Alana Pierce of formerly of Funhouse and IGN and all them, currently of what was it, Sony Santa Monica now, did a live stream trying to help raise money, and they ended up raising $21,000 for the Red Cross to help people in Texas. Texas is not the only one affected. A lot of states had power outages. A lot of states were hurt. Most of the United States was hit by this thing. Some bad stuff in Oregon, but a lot of these states, including directly to our north, were prepared, were a lot better prepared for this. They handled it better. Texas was not, despite all the boasting that we do. People are suffering. People are hurt. People are dead. On top of the hurt that's already been caused by the virus. So if you have any spare change, I know people don't have a lot. Consider donating to those organizations. Every cent counts. Yeah, I'm terrified of what my electric bill is going to look like. My gas bill wasn't that high, a little bit higher than I expected, but $55. It's usually like, if I really use it, like 40. So, but whatever. But we survived, and now hopefully, if everything holds up, I can get back to regular content. Anyway, that looks to have been an episode, so thank you all for joining me, and I will see y'all in the next one. I'm going to start regular streaming. The YouTube channel is probably going to become more of an archive, but I'm still going to do more. I'm still going to do YouTube content that's not streaming, YouTube gameplays, simply because I don't have unlimited. One, I don't always have the upload speed, as you can tell, and two, I don't have all unlimited data. So, lost train of thought. So I'm still going to be doing stuff here and there on the YouTube stuff, but it's going to be mainly an archive because I'm trying to do more live streams when I can. But yeah, trying to keep this train rolling after coming back from hiatus. Meant to come back sooner, but nature and God had a different plan. But we survived it, and so did a lot of others, and we're blessed to survive it. And I'm thankful I'm still here. And not cold anymore. Of course, now what used to make me feel cold doesn't make me feel cold anymore. After getting used to 40-degree temp, now 40 feels warm. So, other than that, thank y'all for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.